Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, the live-action Netflix series. Season 1, Episode 1, Romance Dawn. In this episode, we're getting some of Luffy's origins. We're getting some of Roronoa Zoro's origins. We're getting some of Nami's origins. And very excitingly, we're getting our first glimpse of Buggy the Clown. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Gabriella for commissioning this episode. Gabriella, I'm very, very grateful to you for commissioning this show. I wanted to watch it so bad when it first came out, and I'm really grateful that I'm going to be able to watch it and talk about it with everybody. And I'm really very interested to hear the opinions of you OG fans of this miniseries and how it compares and how, like, because, you know, there are a lot of things that are done slightly differently and a lot of compressions of the overall story, but the spirit of it feels very much the same. It's just all been tightened up a lot, which is, you know, really the main thing that One Piece needs is tightening. So despite those changes and, you know, the things that are necessary to alter for live action, a lot of things that are based on a particular existing super popular property have like shots in them that are meant to be homages to specific moments. And I'm really just curious, those of you who are super familiar either with the original episodes and like know them shot for shot, or with the manga, which I would guess if this was going to be paying homages, it would be to manga panels specifically instead of like the show, the animated show. But also, I am not entirely sure how much the animation from the show mimics what the manga panels have either. So, you know, I'm just really curious for some like side-by-side comparisons, and I'm sure that there are a bunch of like YouTube videos out there already doing that sort of like frame-by-frame analysis. But oh my god, I'm sorry if you guys can hear that. I have Sam sitting beside me in an armchair during this recording because today is his last day with me. Tomorrow at 2:30, I will be bringing him to his forever home. And I'm really glad for him and really excited, but I'm going to miss him so much. He's a big sweetie pie, and I just want to spend every second with him that I can. So, and he's been really wanting a lot of affection today. So I decided to bring my armchair over, and he's kind of resting his head on my desk a little bit. So I apologize if you hear some things, but there's a good likelihood that from today on, I will rarely have a dog in my office again while I record because I will only have Pip to take care of. And I don't think that he's going to want to be confined in here that often. So anyway, that's what's going on. And if you hear some interruptions and weird noises, it's probably Sammy. So forgive me ahead of time. But anyway, all right, let's start this off because you guys, I am so pleased with this first episode. I don't recall. I assume that the way Netflix dropped it was the entire series at once. I could be wrong about that because there are times where they'll release something one episode at a time. Excuse me. And others where they do, you know, mostly they seem to do the like whole season drop. And I have to imagine most people just binge this because it feels really, really bingeable. So let's start things off. I also want to mention, like, these episodes are about an hour long. This one was 64 minutes. So it was really quite, like, in depth. It looks like a lot of the other episodes aren't quite as long, and it makes sense that they're setting the scene with a really long one. To me, that's a good move. So we start things off with a voiceover by Ian McShane. And I remember when Owen told me it was going to be Ian McShane doing the voiceover for this, how excited I got, because that man is just so good. And yeah, he really brings something to this voiceover. It's very atmospheric, and the last line of it is, you know, that it was becoming a land of pirates, and he says it with this like growl in his voice, and it's really, this man is really bringing it. I feel everybody seems to be giving 100%. You know, everybody is hearts completely in it, which I really appreciate, because this is the sort of thing that if you don't come at it with the right attitude as an actor, if you feel silly about it, or you try and like dial it back, it's just going to seem wrong. The whole point of One Piece is how over the top it is, you know? You need to be giving 110. So I'm just seeing there's a comment from Florian that he left before I started. Can't be here today, but super excited to hear your thoughts. So I dropped this comment in advance. I'll try to be at the next one. I think they did a great job. And by the way, if you were worried about this, there are no spoilers for you in the live action for the anime. Yay! I wasn't worried. I figured if it had been commissioned, it was unlikely that there were spoilers to worry about. But I'm glad to have that confirmed. So we start off in Logtown 22 years ago. And something else that I would be very interested in finding out is where they filmed a lot of these town shots. How many of these are straight up CGI? How many of them are actual towns that have been, you know, altered a little bit to get rid of modern technology and whatnot? And how many of them are models, things like that. I'm always really curious about that, because Logtown looks very much like a real place, and it doesn't resemble in almost any way to me what it looked like in the show. But I really don't care. I want to be clear, like, that's not the sort of thing I'm going to be persnickety about. I am not a purist in that sense. So they, you know, you got to do what you've got to do. And I'm sure that the type of budget they were working with for this show did not lend itself to just like building an entire town set, you know? So there is this, what seems to be sort of like a city hall, and that's the one that I think is CGI. Everything else looks real. And we have got the execution of Gold D. Roger. And y'all, this dude is eating this scenery up. It is a really interesting, because like when I first saw Gold D. Roger in the trailers, I was a little bit like, really? Because that dude did not, to me, seem to have that like lantern jaw sort of look. He's got a bit of a baby face, you know? And yet, once I saw him in this scene and the swagger, I was convinced. I was like, okay, you know what? You've won me over again. And of course, we're getting the execution at the top of that huge platform. It's all done really, really close to the show. And I hadn't really put it together the way that this, like, how this worked out for the military here. But the point of what they were trying to do with this public execution of Gold D. Roger, as he puts it in this scene, is they're trying to send a message to all pirates out there that it won't be tolerated. And yet, the whole point of what Gold D. Roger does is attempt to instigate even more piracy than they were performing before. So it's kind of delightful also knowing, as we do now, that spoilers for the show, by the way, those of you who are like, if there's anybody who has found this podcast and hasn't watched the One Piece animated series, I have been covering that for the past few years. I'm currently on episode, I think 440, something like that. So I'm going to be referencing some spoilers from later on in the animated series. So if you don't want to get spoiled on that sort of thing, definitely wait until you've either watched up to the point that I'm at by now or read up on some of that stuff. But I just want to make it clear because I'm sure there are going to be folks that are specifically searching like live action in the title and then come across my podcast and don't know. So those of you who haven't made it to the end and don't mind spoilers, Gold D. Roger had turned himself in, as it turns out. And, you know, the world government attempted this parading of him to make it seem like they were really cracking down and, you know, managing to have control, when in fact this dude was dying already and was just like, I'm going to go out with a bang. You know what I'm going to fucking do? I'm going to turn myself in and I'm going to tell everybody about this shit I buried. And they are going to go fucking bananas. And they do. He is correct. So this whole execution, there's somebody in the audience who yells, "Pirate King, tell us where your treasure is and where you hid it." And it's not the person who says that line, but there is a guy out in the audience here, in the crowd. I am trying to remember his name because he has those crazy sideburns. This man is fine, by the way, and he looks so anime. I am loving this look. I cannot recall, though. He looks so familiar. Like, I can picture the animation in my head. I can't remember who this is. So if anybody wants to remind me of what character this is. But anyway, they ask, "Where have you buried your treasure?" And he starts laughing. He's got those fucking brown teeth. "You want to know where my treasure is?" And we have another, like, sweep of the camera over the whole crowd, zeroing in on some certain faces in particular. There is a woman who has dark hair, dark skin, and this coppery lipstick and eye makeup and lots of gold jewelry. She looks so cool. We see a very young Shanks, and he has a much more mournful look than everybody else, which makes sense. Because, you know, as it turns out, there's connection there. And he says, "I have found everything else the world has to offer. Free yourselves. Take to the seas. My treasure is yours to find." And as he says this, he never says One Piece. I just really want to point this out. It's a weird choice in light of the fact that Luffy later on uses the phrase One Piece to describe this treasure over and over again. So I do think it's sort of weird that they didn't have him say it in his speech, because I know what it is Luffy's talking about. But I've got to be honest. I said this when I first started the show. One Piece is a really, really weird term to begin with. You get used to it because the show goes on for so long using this term that you just accept it. But when you stop and think about, like, the fact that Gold Roger was supposed to have said, "I left all of my treasure in one piece," that's a weird way to say that. So it feels like the show is sort of acknowledging that that's a weird thing to say by leaving it out of his speech. But that's the name of the show, so they can't entirely leave it behind. And it is something that Luffy talks about enough that they decide they're not going to cut it from his dialogue. And I'm sort of like, look, either you keep it or you don't. Like, I think if you've decided you're going to have Luffy say it, you've got to keep it in his speech. So that's the only thing that I'm finding really weird about the live action so far is like, you can't distance yourself from the thing and then like also try and hold on to the thing. That's not going to work for me. I accept that it's just going to, this is the probably only place that this is going to wind up being an issue, because when Luffy mentions the One Piece later on to Kobe knows what he's talking about. So I think we're all meant to accept that in the wider world, everybody refers to the treasure as the One Piece. But I just really I found it weird because watching this speech again, and I was watching the show the first time thinking, I could swear he didn't actually say One Piece. So Luffy saying it and seeing it here. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't say it. But yeah, the effect of his saying all of this, it's very clear how the crowd is starting to react. So the man in charge, whose name I'm forgetting, just signals for the execution and he is killed. But instead of everybody standing there somberly, they all just immediately begin to flee from the square in what's obviously a mad dash to get to their ships so that they can start the search. And this is when we go back to the narrator. His words changed the world forever. A new age was born, the great pirate era, setting off a race across the seas to find the pirate king's hidden treasure. And he says, the One Piece. And I was just sort of like, okay, still sounds super weird, but I accept it. So that's the opening. I don't feel like I quite grasped in the animation when I watched that version of it, how this was supposed to be a suppression event for pirates and how Roger turned it completely on its head and used it to create a new pirate era nightmare for the Marines. So I really liked this tightening up because I felt like, oh, I see. He was really giving them the finger here, which I don't feel like I was quite grasping before. And I don't know if that's just me or there's a lot sort of, when you're watching the animated series for the first time, it's very overwhelming. You know, there's a lot of strange character designs. There's turns of phrase, especially because I was watching the sub. I've since switched to the dub, and I find that to be far superior in terms of conveying tone, especially jokes. But I was watching the sub to begin with, and I think that I was just struggling so much to like keep the overall plot together in my head and keep track of names and stuff that I wasn't able to let my brain relax enough to see the patterns. And this is solidifying some things for me in a way that I really appreciate. So then we go to East Blue, present day, and we are with Luffy, who is wearing the straw hat, and he is trying to shovel water out of this tiny, sad little sailboat. And he is talking to someone about following his dream to find the One Piece. And the way he looks at the camera, it feels like he's talking to us for just a second. But then it pulls back and it turns out that there is a seagull here, one of those like messenger seagulls, listening to him. And I love that it's one of the ones that has the newspapers. I just love that gimmick, these fucking seabirds. But yeah, he says, so what do you say? And the bird just looks at him, tilts its head, and then flies away. And he says to himself, mutiny. And this was in the trailer, and I gotta admit, that got a chuckle out of me in the trailer. Like, I'm going to talk about each actor individually as we go along. But we're going to talk about Luffy first. And I want to look up the names of the actors. I'm a little afraid to do that, but I don't feel like it's, how much can I really be spoiled for this? I'm guessing not that much. So I'm going to IMDb the One Piece live action and just see if I can pull that easily. And if it's too much of a, pain, I will just lay off. But I would like to give actual credit by name. Okay, so it looks like his name, Luffy's actor, is Iñaki Godoy. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This kid is killing it. What? I love him. I can't get over the sheer sweetness that rolls off him. I feel like there is something about the Luffy in the subs that missed for me so bad that when I accidentally watched with the dub and I was suddenly like, oh, I feel like I get Luffy a lot better now, I couldn't go back. And he feels like he's taking it one step further. There is a sunniness to him, and he's indefatigable. Completely unflagging in a way that doesn't feel silly or obnoxious, at least not yet. Luffy can be obnoxious, don't get me wrong, but is managing to seem pure and real, very genuine. And this is a difficult thing to pull off. And I just want to express how totally delighted I am by him already. We're one episode in. This dude is Luffy, and this is the sort of thing that I'm like, good luck, kid, because if you decide you want to do literally anything else, you're going to be Luffy forever. This is like Daniel Radcliffe being Harry Potter. Like, Daniel Radcliffe has gone on to do so many other things and act in so many other things. He will never shake that he was Harry Potter. That's immediately what everybody's going to think of every time they hear his name. And Iñaki, I don't think this is a bad thing, because you are just killing it, man. Candace is in the chat. Yay. Hi, Candace. Candace is saying he is so good. Yeah, he really, really is. And the delivery of that line, just saying mutiny, that could so easily fall flat. That could fail so easily. And he makes me, even after the first time I actually laughed out loud when I saw the trailer, my lips still quirk. I still smirk a little. Like, he still gets me, because that's how good the delivery is on this very silly joke. And that is what he manages to keep doing, is just getting me to like laugh in spite myself. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, this is when he feels his ship beginning to genuinely sink, climbs into a barrel. This is from the show, and winds up falling asleep in the barrel and getting picked up by a pirate ship that we all recognize. You guys, when I tell you all how excited I was. So there's a lot of things in this show that they're having to like really slow down on or do a lot more simply. But Alvida being in the first episode, I really wasn't sure when I first heard about the show if they were going to do Alvida at all, because like, yes, that's how he meets Kobe, but you could have it be kind of anybody. And I would have understood the choice to have it be somebody of more overall significance. Now, I say that with a full understanding that I haven't finished watching the animated show. So it's possible Alvida will have a much, much bigger role to play in the animated one than she does currently, but she's kind of a side villain. She's not really a main player. But you guys know, I have such a soft spot for Alvida. Like, she's so ridiculous. They really toned down her outfit for the show. And this was something I was extremely curious about, because the costumes in One Piece are banana pants. Fucking bonkers insane. the kind of shit I could not see how you would have a person actually wear this and me be able to take it at all seriously. And yet, at the same time, there was a big part of me that was sort of like, I don't want them to completely ignore what the costumes are either. And for the record, Alvida's costume, like, it's toned down. Really, the overall thing that they pull back on is the color scheme. The bright blues and pinks of her outfit are much more subdued. It's all sort of done like it's really been worn in the sun and in the weather, and just over time has lost some of its luster. It's not like they're doing the make everything gray like the DC universe has done. I'm not trying to accuse it of that, but everything has a more weathered look. So to a degree, the outfit's going to be different because of that. But, you know, Alvida in the show, she has like a navy blue with gold trim jacket. She's got white shorts. Like the whole thing is really, really goofy looking. And in this, they have her in a black sort of cowboy hat. She's got a brown leather jacket that's like this, a similar style. I always think of this as like a marching band style because of the way the buttons go straight across, but I know that's not what it's called. It's just what I think of. The coat is like a sort of similar military look, but it doesn't have lapels. It's got a pretty different cut overall. It's just the effect is similar. And they have her in this like pink, it's like a pink blouse, but it also has either sleeves that come all the way down over her hands, or she's got gloves that are made out of a similar material. They leave her fingers free. They're fingerless gloves, but I really am so excited about her because she, being a fat, curly-haired girl, I mean, I have to cosplay her at some point. You know I do. It's just a fucking requirement. So someday, when I have actually finished the show and I can go to cons and not worry about spoilers and shit, I am going to be Alvida and nobody can stop me. And I'm going to have to decide whether I want to be show Alvida or, well, they're both show, I guess. Do I want to be animation Alvida or live action Alvida? And part of me kind of wants to go the animation route because the costume is so crazy. But I was really happy to see her, and I was really happy that she manages to carry off the vibe of somebody who is like not okay. This bitch is crazy. She swings across at one point while swinging a flail, and she looks so badass. She was truly scary, you know? And then there's a great moment about, like, you know, a few minutes after the whole taking of this other ship ends, they've loaded all kinds of stuff onto her ship, and one of them is the barrel that Luffy is in. She starts walking around talking about Roronoa Zorro and the fact that he was definitely on their ship, and she believes that they are hiding him. And one of these guys is not reading the fucking room. So when she says, "Where is he?" and he's like, "Well, he went to Sixtus Island," she's like, "That's definitely not true because I'm out here. I don't know if you noticed. And I'm extremely dangerous and intimidating. There's nobody else he would chase. Why would he go to Sixtus Island? That doesn't even make sense." And then he says something about how Zorro had a list of pirates and their bounties. And she said, "And of course I was at the top." And this guy says, "Actually, your name wasn't on it." And I'm just like, kid, why would you tell her that? Why would you tell her the truth? Just be like, yeah, literally what difference would it make if you just said, Yeah, your name was definitely on it. Just say, oh yeah, he heard, a rumor. You were on Six's Island, so that's why he went there. Like, dude. But no, he has to get his head bashed in with this duck flail. What would you call this? Just I don't know the word. A club? Is it just a club? Anyway, this is when we get our first look at Kobe, because she bashes this guy's head in, and then she summons Kobe to clean up the blood. And he is... So, Kobe is so well cast. He's got that really anxious, nervous energy that Kobe has. But also, you can see the sort of like desire to think better of the world and make it better in him. And there's something, Kobe's face is so sweet and soft. Like, there's a femininity to his face. And I was just very struck by how familiar an actor he felt. And I looked into his IMDb eventually, and I could not find anything that I had seen him in. So the familiarity, I don't know where that's coming from, but they are reminding me of some other actor, and I can't place it. Candace is saying he's so earnest. Yes. That's the thing about the show in general, is how earnest it tends to be. So one other thing I want to touch on in terms of like the difference between the show here and the animation. The animation, it's not like there's not blood in it, but there's really a sense that nobody ever actually dies. You know, like even people who whatever happened to them should definitely have killed them, even when they're on the ground with their eyes like whited out. Sometimes those people, it jumps a scene and they're back and it's like it never happened. Sometimes they really are dead, you know, like there are big bads who I wasn't sure if we were going to go with the fact that they were really dead or not because of how the show is very indecisive about that. But then I would hear them reference that person later and be like, well, you killed him. And I'd be like, okay, fine. We're going to say he was dead then. And because of the way the live action works, it's so much more bloody and more obvious. And so the guy who's like head she bashes in, this dude is dead. Like you could see the brain matter on the deck that he's swabbing up. And later on, when Zorro fights that guy and chops him into halves, that's pretty gruesome. You know, it's not like over the top. I wouldn't call it. It's not like the camera lingers on the, you know, pulsing veins bleeding out on the ground or anything, but it certainly feels like it's much, much more direct than some of the show's choices with the animation. So we go below decks to Kobe, who is washing her mallet. I keep forgetting the word I'm looking for. And it's with his little spiked like mohawk, and he's got a toothbrush to scrub all of the brains out of the cracks. Ugh, what a gross job. And this is when one of the barrels begins to move, and he goes and just as he gets up to the barrel, like Luffy pops out of it and he starts screaming, and Luffy is telling him to shh, because he's trying to figure out where he is, if there's food, what he should do to, like, you know, there's just trying to establish the overall situation. And the whole vibe between these two is very, very true to the show, with Kobe being kind of awed by Luffy and Luffy being genuinely puzzled why Kobe's in this position with Alvida when he doesn't want to be. There's just a real, well, then you just leave. And Kobe says something like, well, she would never let me leave. And you can almost hear Luffy going, let you, like, you just leave. I don't even understand the relationship between what you're saying and what I'm saying. But obviously, Kobe has been, like, there have been very few options open to him. And Alvida would take it personally in a way that would be like, I will find you just to punish you so that other people don't get the idea they can just leave. So when Kobe mentions to him that Alvida's a pirate, Luffy's like, oh, great, I'm a pirate too. And Kobe's like, you don't seem like a pirate because they are pieces of shit. And Luffy says, not the pirates I know. And then we get a flashback to very young, adorable Luffy. This kid's quite good. And this is the whole establishing of him and Shanks as friends, that he wants to like emulate Shanks so bad and yet doesn't really fully understand what it is he's getting into. And yet he doesn't have a lot of options open to him either. So it's like, even if he knew what he was getting into, is that going to change his plan? He's got exactly 2 options: throw himself into piracy or stay on this godforsaken island. He doesn't have any family. There's nobody like watching over him who would notice him gone. So there's no motivation for him to stay here. And he's like talking about joining the crew, but Shanks is not interested. And at one point somebody's like, Shanks, you're being a little hard on him. And Shanks says it's better to have a kid now who's disappointed than a kid who's dead later, which is pretty much the whole, like, that's what it comes down to. Now, let's talk about Shanks. Shanks is the only, like, disappointment for me so far. It's not that the actor isn't good, but Shanks had a certain swagger to him that I don't feel this actor is quite bringing. And also, this fucking wig they have on him. Now, the show is littered with bad, crazy wigs because the show, the fucking, what are you supposed to do? Anime hair is impossible most of the time. Like, it has to be a wig. So I get it, but this in particular looks like it's just some strands that were ripped out of a wig, like a couple of wefts that somebody sewed to the inside of the hat. It's bad. I really, really hate this look. And that look combined with this dude just not quite packing the charisma I was hoping for, it's not a good combination. I feel like he's just a little bit of a letdown. So we'll see. Maybe he will grow on me. Maybe there'll be a point at which I'm like, oh, okay, no, I see it now. But I'll say by the end of this episode, I was just kind of like, I guess, okay, I guess that's supposed to be Shanks. Like, that wig, guys, I would swear I see his natural hair poking out from underneath it in the back. Like, it just doesn't even look like it's put on correctly. So anyway, this is a moment where we get Luffy stabbing himself in the face. He was aiming for his eye and missed, apparently, because he's a lunatic. And I forgot about this whole thing and that he's like trying to prove himself. So later on, he's getting stitches and complaining. And Shanks is like, I thought you were supposed to be tough. And he's like, well, yeah, I am. But, you know. And he says, you're lucky you didn't put out your eye. And he says, well, I was aiming for it. But, you know, sometimes shit just doesn't work out like you meant it to work out. So we go back to the present. And Luffy is talking about how he wants to be a pirate because that means you're free. And Kobe is like, dude, that's not my life. I'm told what to do every second of the day. And Luffy is genuinely like, what? You just don't let people tell you what to do. If I listened to what people say, I would never have left to try and find the One Piece. And this is when Kobe is like, what? Is that what you're doing? Are you kidding me? No, everybody's looking for that. You're not going to go find it. I mean, there's simply no way. And they begin kind of like going back and forth about dreams. And this comes up later on, but I'll address it now. When Kobe finally admits his dream that he thinks is stupid, is to become a Marine. So Luffy is like, all right, well, let's make that happen. I need a map to the Grand Line, and you want to become a Marine, so we'll just stop at a Marine headquarters, and I'll get my map, and you can join up, and it'll be good. We'll have each gotten what we wanted. For now, we have the bit with Luffy trying to get a what do you call it? Life raft. He's about to take off. He picks up an oar and accidentally turns and hits something metal and wakes up the entire ship. And Alvida thinks that Luffy is a bounty hunter. So she's thinking here that Kobe betrayed her to him. But once she finds out that he wants to be king of the pirates, she's just like, yeah, that's not going to happen. There's already a most powerful pirate of the seas here, and it's me. And of course, they all begin to chant for her. So then she brings out her huge mace and says, oh, it's so weird, Kobe. I didn't hear you saying anything. And Luffy is like, Kobe is his own man. It's fine. He doesn't have to say it. And she says, no, he's not. He's mine. And Luffy says, he said you were mean and cruel. And each of the things that he says here, her smile gets bigger. But then when he says, and that you're as dumb as a sea cow, that's when she loses it and she goes for Kobe. And we get our first fight getting to see what Luffy's power looks like. Now, this is always going to be a really, really big question because some of the devil fruit powers are completely bizarre. And I genuinely don't know how you make them look like anything in a live action without it being so laughable that you could never. You know what I'm saying? So Luffy's power, I feel like, is one that's relatively easy in a lot of ways to do. It has a very strong Roger Rabbit sort of feel to it. And we see it the first time with him getting shot and the bullet just bouncing out of his chest into the other guy. And then she slams him in the middle and he, bows outward. And she says, what kind of monster are you? And he says, the stretchy kind. Long story short, she goes overboard and he looks around and says, does anybody else have a problem with Kobe? And the place is on fire at this point. And this is the moment that I really was like, oh, okay, yeah, here's Luffy. Because he's been sunshine, he's been positivity, he's been follow your dreams. But when he gets serious and says, does anybody else have a problem with Kobe? He is genuinely intimidating. This is a dude, if I ran up on him on the street, I would be like, whatever, look at this string bean. He comes at me with that kind of bass in his voice, and I'm going, nah, I'm good. I don't want that smoke. Thank you, but no, I'll pass. There's just a whole energy shift when he's getting, it's here, and also when she starts to really go after Kobe, he stands in front of Kobe and says, that's enough. And it's just a complete, yeah, I am not to be fucked with. I will handle the situation. And I was like, all right, well there. Okay. Candace says there was something about the way he delivered that line, the stretchy kind, that absolutely killed me. I cackled. He gave Luffy some depth, and I really just love him. Definitely. And this is the thing about Luffy in the anime as a character, is that he is a complete goofball, and then something will just set him off. Because somebody went after his friend. Somebody went after an innocent. And all of a sudden, smiling Luffy is gone. And there's just this shadowed, ripped dude standing there going, what did you just say? And you're like, oh, they went after the wrong one. And I'm really glad that he's able to like do that convincingly here. So anyway, I have to jump ahead here to Roanoa Zorro. Y'all, I really am so sorry. I apologize ahead of time. But most of my coverage of this show is just going to be me thirsting over Zorro. So just sorry, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Like, how am I not, you know what I'm saying? So it says this actor's name is McKenyu. One name, no last. I cannot with this guy. What's happening here is he is at a site that seems like it is of worship. He's lighting a candle and he is being approached by Mr. Seven of the Baroque Works. So they're bringing in the Baroque Works really quick because this was not how early this all happened. Unless I'm wrong and they were mentioned real early, but I don't remember that. And he turns his back on this guy and is just like, nah, thanks. I kind of got my own thing going on. And when he turns his back, you really see the shape of this man and the shoulders and the dip between his shoulders and the way his shirt, like, he just turns his fully clothed back to this man. And I was already going, oh my God. And it just got worse. It just kept getting worse. Everything this dude does is hotter than the thing he just did. I don't know how I'm supposed to watch this show. What am I, like, come on. So we get a fucking dope ass sword fight. And forgive me guys, because I'm running out of time and I'm not even halfway through, but I'm going to have to speed shit up. This sword fight, I will say the fight coordinating and the editing, I think is done really well. It's not like we're at the levels of like John Wick or something, okay? There are certain things that I feel like have given me some unrealistic expectations, but I think that they've done a pretty fucking impressive job with the fight scenes here and then the one later in the Navy Yard. And Zorro really, especially the fight in the bar when everything first begins to pop off, where it just feels like he's strolling with very little need to like pay attention to what's around him because everybody is so slow and predictable that he doesn't have to worry. It's done excellently. There's just a very strong sense with Zorro of he simply has nothing to worry about because he is that good. And if he strolls in, that shit's over already, And I love him going up against Mr. Seven and this dude, there comes a point where he really realizes, oh, this was a mistake. And then he gets cut in half and his halves go to different sides. And it's a great, great moment. So this is when we have the flashback with Shanks and the pirate who he gets in a fight with, and Luffy says that he's not a man because he lets this guy walk all over him. And that's when Shanks says that he's not ready. And we cut then to Nami, who does the thing where she pretends that she just escaped with her life and this one chest of treasure. And these two dudes, these guys, are wearing much, much more One Piece, to me, style outfits than anybody on the show so far. They're absolutely out of pocket. The guy's wig, the black man has a wig that's like combed, parted in the center into these two lumps. And the other dude has this weird hat on, and they're both wearing bright colors that are like striped and patterned in ways that feel really silly. Overall, the fact that I believe these two wind up being with Buggy later, you can see that in their costuming here. But yeah, this whole bit is very accurate to the anime, and I loved seeing her sail away with their ship. Then let's go the bar scene with Zorro. Nami is also at this bar, and she tells one guy that he's too tall and goes after this other dude. And it turns out this is because she wants to steal the uniform. So she's looking for somebody who is going to be a good fit. And we get a sequence that I just love so much. So first we have, what is the name of this? The Helmeppo, I think is his name. I just really want to give him some props as well. So let's see if he's here in the IMDb. Aiden Scott. Aiden Scott. Fucking amazing. I am into it. He does such a good job with the weird mouth and laughter and the like. He's just really, really, really great. There's a sequence later where he's naked in his room, like practicing with the sword in front of the mirror. And that was it felt like so accurate to the type of person he is, the whole way he carried himself. It was great. And yeah, this fight between him and Zorro is of course when Luffy steps in and, well, not steps in. It's sort of like he zeroes in and sees, oh, here's a guy who's like a really good fighter and also is standing up for this little girl. And I just, again, can't handle it with Zorro, y'all. Helmeppo does not have the hair at first. And I was sort of like, that's weird. I mean, that's actually bad hair that would be pretty easy to carry off without a wig, you know? And then he has it later. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty good joke. Okay. I like that actually. But yeah, this whole fight sequence, this is the sort of thing that I'm planning to rewatch this with Owen. And I'm going to be very much looking forward to seeing Owen's reaction to this fight scene. It's just, I mean, Zorro's, like I said, strolling through it. He's practically one-handed. There's no weapon even drawn. Like, it's very good. So let's jump ahead a little bit here to the point where he meets Axe Hand, Iron Jaw. What the fuck is his name? This guy is one of my least favorite antagonists in the show. He just feels so one note to me in a lot of ways. So I'm glad that he winds up sort of becoming less of a thing. But for right now, I think this actor is doing a decent job with what the character is and, you know, what to expect from somebody like this. And he gives Zorro the option of becoming a Marine and going out into the yard for 7 days, which I thought it was funny that he assumes it's just 7 days. And I'm like, well, for striking a Marine, how many Marines did you strike though, Zorro? But that winds up not being an issue later. So Zorro, who is constantly, people are trying to recruit him because he's such a fucking badass, is like, nah, I have my own thing going on. Again, which is what he also repeats to Luffy when he's out in the yard. He's talking to Helmeppo about how, like, oh, you know, when I'm let out of here, and Helmeppo's like, dude, you're not getting out of here. I can't believe you think my dad's letting you go. And he seems to sort of realize, like, oh shit, maybe I should have thought of that. And when Luffy comes in and is just like, you should become one of my, you know, pirate crew. He's like, well, I hunt you guys. Like, no, I don't want to do that. Once again, I've got my own thing going on. But what happens later is Luffy unties him from the spot that he is being kept and then doesn't demand anything of him in repayment. what Luffy says is, it just seems like a pretty big waste of time for you to be here when there's something that you want out there. What he says is, I made a promise to somebody a long time ago that I would become the best swordsman in the world. And Luffy is nothing but a sucker for a dream. So, of course, this is the magic words to get him to help you. And you can tell that Zoro's genuinely sort of moved by the fact that Luffy's helping him just because he respects his dream and not because he's trying to get something in return. So we go then to Nami, who is, you know, poking around wearing this uniform, trying to find the map. We have her and Luffy running into one another, and the two of them eventually accidentally, like, they are walked right into Axe Hand, and she manages to sweet talk him and give him just enough of a compliment that he's flattered, but it doesn't seem totally over the top. It's like, it's a compliment, but it's so subdued that it works for a guy like this really well. And Luffy is getting extremely impressed with how she's handling the situation. I love that he's like, she's the best, and then realizes, like, best of the worst. I hate Marines. Oh my God. So eventually, by teaming up, they do indeed find the safe where the map would be, but they can't get it open in time. So Luffy has to use his wild powers to yank the safe out of the floor, and what's the word I want? The force of that pulls them through, like, the window and into the yard outside, where we get the whole fight scene with all of these Marines, and Zorro is walking by them, clearly intending to just fucking leave. But he turns around and he sees Nami, and he sees Luffy, the dude who helped him, who's kind of starting to get thrown around a little bit. It's clear they're holding their own, but this might be too many people for the two of them. And he's like, fine. And he just sails in there like a goddamned force of nature and just takes all of them out. And this whole thing is so, like, the posturing and everything is very, very fun. We have the mention of the Black Cat Pirates here, and I'm just sort of like, they aren't as defeated as this dude seems to think. I am interested to see how that's going to happen, what's going to go on there. But yeah, then we have the, one-on-one with, I keep wanting to call him Axe Hand, but it's Morgan, right? It's Axe Hand Morgan, I think. But yeah, this whole thing is fun because it's the first time we get to see Zorro using the three sword technique. And Luffy says, so that's where it goes, because he could not figure out what the point of three swords was. And you see a moment where that third sword does indeed seem to come in handy, which I appreciate because sometimes that three sword technique is lost on me. There are points where I'm just sort of like, that feels like it's more of a nuisance than a help, but okay. And Luffy decks Morgan, and he apparently gets knocked out. I don't think he's dead, if I'm not mistaken. And they're looking at the safe and talking about how they're going to open it. And Zorro just picks that shit up and begins to walk with it. And it looks like it weighs like 200 pounds. So they head over to the docks, and he drops it onto Nami's ship. And she, like, there was a big part of me that was expecting her to be like, you guys aren't coming with me. But for now, she's like, I guess we're all in this together. And he's looking for his friend. Luffy is like, well, where's my bro? I can't leave without Kobe. This is when Helmeppo shows up. And he's got a gun. Has he got two guns? I think it's two guns, and Luffy's pointing out his hair. Oh my God. It's so good, you guys. Helmeppo tries to fire a shot at Zorro, but it's like way off. And he starts talking about how if he catches them, he's going to get a medal. And then out of nowhere, here comes Kobe, and he decks him in the face. And it's a real moment of triumph for Kobe. Good for you, bud. Appreciate you. And when Luffy's like, all right, it's time for us to go, Kobe says, I'm not coming with you. And Luffy has a like, oh shit. But he remembers what his goal is. And earlier, after seeing the way that Helmeppo treated that little girl, Kobe was like, this doesn't make any sense. They are the Marines. They're supposed to be defending people like her. What is the fucking deal? And Luffy has to be like, there are good and bad people in the pirates and good and bad people in the Marines. You would be one of the good ones. And Kobe says, here, I want to help people who can't defend themselves. Next time we meet, we might be enemies. And Luffy says, but for now, we're friends. And it's really sweet. I loved it. I love this so much. He just gives Kobe a shove on the shoulder. And it's just like, all right, buddy. Ever like, parting as friends. It's sweet. I liked it. And they sail away on this little sailboat. I really, really like the look of the sailboat, the way that it's designed. I don't know. There's something about it that feels really like warm and cozy to me. And I sort of wish this was going to be the ship that they're on for the whole show. And it may be like, I don't know how long it takes for them to meet Usopp, and then we get a moment here where there's a ship with like a bulldog on the helm. And we have got the guy who was in charge of the execution of Roger. He's picking up the phone, and it's Garp, you guys. I had not put together that this dude was supposed to be Garp. Not until this very instant. That's weird. Huh. Okay. Like spoilers again for the anime. Garp is Luffy's grandfather. So, okay. Well, this is surprising. I didn't think they were going to loop him in on things quite this early, but okay. But yeah, he hears that there is a pirate in a straw hat that got a map to the Grand Line. And clearly this, is very meaningful to him. His face falls, he hangs up. And when he is talking to his second man in command, that guy brings up Baroque works. And he's like, is that what this is about? And he's like, nope, it is about somebody in a straw hat. And that is the end of the episode, I think no, my bad. The end of the episode, how could I forget, is us getting to see Buggy the Clown. And he is being reported to by, I'm trying to remember what this character's name is, but he's got the stripy hair, and I believe in the anime he has like a pet lion. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this dude is probably in the anime, he has such a distinctive look that when I saw him in the bar as he just walks away to go to inform to his boss, I immediately recognized who he was. And there's just certain looks that they fucking nailed for the live action. And he's really one of them. And yeah, we get to see Buggy, and he is so creepy. I'm very, very excited. I love Buggy the Clown. He is such a fun, weird character. And I feel like they have really found an actor who is embracing the true bonkers nature of this dude. So I'm looking forward to this a lot. Candace says Garp is so hot. Yeah, I could see that. I'm really interested in how Sanji's going to be, because I felt like in the preview I saw, Sanji was really giving. So we'll see. I'm excited to meet the whole rest of the crew. And of course, this season we don't have a Chopper. So if we're getting season 2, I assume we have to have Chopper. And that is going to be a challenge because I don't know how you do Chopper. Are you going to do a puppet? Are you going to do CGI? Are you going to have somebody in a suit? Genuinely, I don't know what I would prefer they do. I feel like I would like a puppet more than I would like CGI, but I can't even say that with total certainty. So we'll have to see. I'm over time, so I've got to wrap this up. But guys, I'm so excited. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you, Gabby, again for commissioning this. And until next week, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.